It's world number one Magnus Carlsen against young Nodebek Abdusatorov in the final of the World Blitz Chess Championship 2025. One of these guys is about to take the crown. I'm going to bring you all four games because it was decided without an Armageddon. Magnus playing with whites here in game one, Blitz Chess in Qatar. 3 minutes each, plus they get 2 seconds per move. That's known as increment, occasionally excrement. Magnus goes for a Queen's Gambit, and it's accepted by Nodebek. And traditionally, at the top level, white doesn't get a lot here. Magnus says go b5 if you want. Be my guest, but Nodebek doesn't do it. Magnus playing the humble b3, wants to tuck the bishop in like that. And this is Nodebek's point around his development. He wants to tuck his bishop in on b7 and play for the c5 break. And as you can see, things are very symmetrical. Does that mean draw? No, sorry. This is Magnus Carlsen at the board here. One of these guys wins this first game. Bloodshed on the board in round one. It's so exciting here. Now we see this symmetrical pawn structure really hit home. Nothing going on, surely. How are we going to get that blood out of a stone here? Magnus centralizing the knight. The cannon joins the party. Bishop f3, really natural idea to change off one of these really powerful bishops that black's got. Queen recaptures, this knight centralizing, and pushing with the pawns a possibility, but Magnus finds a different way to mix it up here. Knight f5 on the board. Where did that thunderbolt come from, right? Now it is taken. One of the top moves. You could have looked at moving the queen, but this isn't wrong by any means. Pawn is now attacked, and so it's defended like this. An exchange of the ladies offered, but Magnus doesn't yet go for it. Or does he? Nodebek insists, so he does take them off the board here. Loves himself an endgame with no queens, and this is what he wants to do now. Grind, grind, grind. Now don't take with the rook. There's a tactical problem here. Can you see it? It's knight takes on b6. That bishop not really doing its job anymore. White winning here. So let's back it up. Pawn takes played. Magnus with the better structure. This is the kind of thing he lives for. I'm losing my breath, sorry, and my voice. And of course, we see the absolutely wonderful rectangle on the board. I mean, it's utter scenes down in the Qatar open section here. Fabi starts stomping his hooves. We love to see it. Now we see this pair of rooks exchanged. This one recapturing and the king entering the game. Nodebek copies, and watch this. He brings the king right over. What could be more natural? Magnus getting his pawns off the colour complex. Now we see knight b2. What's that all about? A fianchettoed knight. Watch this. Snakes his rook over to the king side. Nodebek finds this incredible defence to his credit by pushing now with h6 with the bishop back on f8. You're watching two lions at work here, and knight f4. Magnus so ambitious. He's just giving up on his queen side pretty much to go after the bishop, go after the king side pawn, and he does win it. He's got a passer. However, check, Nodebek's got real counterplay. Now Magnus steps this way. He could have hung around here, very drawish, but he wants to go for it, but it's risky. Nodebek's got the better minor piece here. Bishops are good at covering two sides of the board. Pawns on both sides, right? So Magnus is playing with fire. Best is actually a check here, but he pushes the pawn. So natural. White's winning with e5, apparently. Getting the avalanche going through the centre, but king c7. Now the check. King steps in, going for this pawn. Magnus should recycle the knight or keep pushing and defend this one. You know, it is attacked right now, but he drops back. Very un-Magnus move. Bit passive, right? Blocking the way of the pawn. Nodebek takes here. Now pawn h5. King b4. and Magnus goes horrendously wrong. He's lost so much time now in this endgame with that rook messing about. Now headed back here. King takes on b3. Look at that. The writing's on the wall. Magnus wants to check, but the bishop's covering the square. So he should play knight f4 as an alternative plan, but he's still technically lost. He plays to hit the bishop, kick it away from the square, which he does successfully, but there's a huge problem. He just dug his own grave, a mating net. His only way out of this mating net is by pushing e4. Just to show you, by the way, this and rook d2 is checkmate. King's got no squares, cannot go anywhere. Hence why you have to go e4, but then check, and you lose an entire rook. Plus this is still running. Game over, right? Magnus resigns. Nordebek takes first blood. Let's go to game 2. Magnus with black. What does he do? Pits defense. He wants a complicated, weird battle here, trying to take Nordebek down. If you want to learn this kind of fighting chess, use Lotus Chess. Link is in the description. I love it. I'll say no more. Just check it out. It's so good. Free to get started. We've got too much chess to cover today. Now, we've seen many top players playing with knight c3 to cover the center. Then bishop c4, knight here, a4, a5. Fabi got a great game in this structure. But here we see bishop d3. Slightly more modest, but still a great system. Because watch this. Visually, once we get to this position here, it looks like black has equalized. Both players got their bits out, king's castled, symmetrical pawn structure, but white's got the extra move, the first move, and it makes a big difference here because you start putting the pressure on the pawn. So Magnus covers with his rook like this. A3 now goes for the expansion. Magnus clamps. This bishop slides over, insisting, and after pawn b6, before you can say, show me your concentration face, here's Anton Korobov doing it with aplomb. Nordebek gains space and he kicks back this bishop. But how Magnus fights here is just legendary. He first drops off the bishop to the king. Bishop c3. This pawn is on toast, but Magnus fights against the e-pawn, covered by Chewbacca's favourite move, the Wookiee one. Now he bounces back with the bishop to cover the centre some more. Don't take, repair the structure. Or at least it still looks ugly, but you cover the e-pawn, so we get knight takes, winning a clean pawn. But Magnus does have counterplay with queen e7, and more than just counterplay, he's clean winning the pawn back. Because when the knight backs up, he takes the b-pawn here, material restored, now the queen invades, hits some stuff, but Magnus fights back in the centre. He's a pawn up now. However, the c-pawn dropping doesn't quite get mated, queen dropping back, and now we see the b-pawn running and the queen activating. They leave the board. Magnus fans absolutely love it. Surely this is a dead draw. No sorry. Something incredible happens here. Again, one of these players goes down in what should be a drawn endgame. Pawn pushing, attacked, knight attacked, pawn attacked, knight attacked. Don't blunder anything. They're playing on seconds. The level, the quality of chess is out of this world. Now knight g7, another check. King in, knight has to move, king stepping back, and after king d4, g4 on the board, cementing the symmetrical structure. Magnus now rotates around, gives a check, and Nordebek makes a horrendous blunder in this position. He should step back with the king to stay with the c-pawn, but plays king e2. Look at that. The absolute collapse of the bar because Magnus steps in and he's completely winning. Now if you cover the pawn, you run into this check and the b-pawn's just unstoppable. You can't even get anything in here like this. Knight's covering right. What to do? And the kingside counterplay, never fast enough. Queen is on the board here. So, no king d1. We see knight f5 going for the play. Now this pawn is gobbled. B pawn running. Check. Nordebek knows he can't take that h pawn. He has to try and stop the b pawn. But guess what? Magnus does this outstanding manoeuvring. This is why he practices for World Blitz Chess Championship finals. And even though he loses the h pawn and lets this knight take the b pawn, this is completely winning, and he knows it. Because after the king steps in, here comes the black king. If you now go king here to hit the knight, obviously you couldn't step here, that square's covered, then this is the point. The knight steps to h4, forms a barrier with the pawn, and so this king has to go around the long way, and you always lose this tempo as the knight now comes back to cover the pawn. So the king runs back, of course, but now the knight steps in, you no longer even have that move. Here's how the game could proceed. King gets round, munches the pawn, and this is of course a one-end game. Away goes the pawn. So you might be wondering, what happens if you try this randomizer? Well, it's what was played in the game by Nordebek. Magnus takes it, and after king f4, there's a loss on the board. What if you push this pawn, try and start a race? Bang! Knight takes, and if king takes, then the pawn runs. If king doesn't take, and you step in to get the pawn, then it pushes. And of course you can't take the pawn, it's covered. Can't take the knight, or the pawn runs. Meanwhile, you wait around, and the black king steps in, escorts the pawn home. So here we didn't see g5. We saw king f4 hitting the knight, but knight g5. It's such instructive, beautiful chess. Again, there's a barrier. Again, you can't take or the pawn runs. If king e3, h3, and what to do, right? King steps in. Even if it gets to here, it doesn't matter. You can't take. It's just an immovable, unmovable, whatever the word, construction. And eventually the king gets in, brings the pawn home. Magnus takes it home there, one apiece. Let's jump to the third. He's got white, and he plays a Jabava London, or a Jar Jar Binks, as FM Canty said in studio on commentary. The knight jumping in here. Let's keep rattling through the moves. Queen hitting the pawn, defended. Nordebek doesn't want that queen exchange. He knows how dangerous Magnus is, and he jumps the knight here. Weird looking square. Where's it actually headed from there? And Nordebek says, fine, I'm going to push the rook pawn. So often a good plan when a knight sits clumsily on the 6th or the 3rd rank. So we see bishop d3, pushing again, knight e2, and this is indeed a good move. We're in the back cave. Nordebek doesn't play it. Apparently this is a very bad structure. You know, I was exploring this kind of thing. Something like this. So running back here after h3, you're apparently best to take. But how ugly does that look? Advantage black. But Nordebek plays this, and it's a tiny bit meek. He lets Magnus get h3. Now we see queen c7. These ones leave the board, and Magnus has saved himself out the opening. Still black a tiny bit better. Taking on b7 no good. Rook comes here. White can even win a second pawn with the queen. But then this one munches here, and long story short, it's black doing well. King's not yet castled. So a4 from Magnus, b6, a5, rook b8, queen steps off the line here, and both players now castle. Takes on a5, activating the rook, weak pawn, but Nordebek's fighting back here. He plays bishop b5, you have to, this one's too much of a monster, and the knight rotates to c1. Magnus wants to take back there, of course, so Nordebek doesn't oblige him. He brings the knight to the edge. Normally a very stinky move, but he's headed for this sensitive square. Makes so much sense with the pawn here and the dark squared grip. So Magnus now takes. Pawn recaptures. Rook, sorry. Many games to cover. Let's keep rattling. What an octopus this is. about to spring from the 3rd rank, also covers f4, and so Nodebek challenges it. Now you could go knight e5, but really Magnus can't be claiming advantage here. This pawn's so annoying, the knight's so powerful, this one's more advanced, his pawn structure can't get going, so he does take. He attacks this pawn, rook defends, that b4 move is blockaded, g6, rook a1, king g7, queen c5, and now Nodebek bails out to a draw. In a drawn position, granted, he's got options, he could go queen d2, queen e4, waiting moves, whatever it might be, but he plays the thunderbolt. Rook a8, given the brilliancies, because you're sacking an entire piece, but you're not lost. It's a perpetual check idea. Here a draw was agreed, because the king will get checked forever, and you can never go g3, or you actually lose the game. Like this, you're about to get mated, and you can't stop it. No way to get back in any sensible fashion. Yes, you can check, but the king runs, and it's absolutely fine. Just don't step to f5, you get mated in 1. Step to g5, and now you can block with the f-pawn. Key difference in the variation, white has to start doing stupid stuff. So draw agreed, let's go to the 4th and final. One of these guys wins this game, wins the World Blitz Chess Championship. Let's go, baby. Nodebek's e4 on the board, and solid from Magnus. e5, no nonsense. Knights developing, and Roy Lopez, named after J-Lo's uncle. a6. Why is this not blundering a pawn? Well, this is the old trick, in case you don't know it. And you win back the pawn once the knight moves, right? So we didn't see the exchange variation, which can be playable in different ways. This is the mainline stuff that they all do. Pawn defended. Now we see b5 from Magnus. Bishop backing up here, and steady development. No bishop c5, sort of archangel stuff, or whatever it's called. He's keeping it super solid, super steady. Exchange of pawns, and the knight on c3. Very often we see a pawn there, right? Different game. This is how Nodebek chooses to play castles, but Magnus does a great job here. He equalises white's opening initiative very comfortably. Knight rotating, bishop in the game now, and after rook takes c3, d5, we'd really have to consider the position equal now. It's actually black with 3 pawns on the 5th rank versus white's 1. The pieces stand fine. Bishop's a bit better than the counterpart. Dodgy arrow, sorry, but it's just a level game. We see queen c2. Pawn b4 on the board. Rook fd1 lasers against this queen, and so she steps out of the way here. Maybe headed for b7. Sometimes you see the top guys do this, but Magnus has got other ideas. This is looking a bit more sensible. Rotating around. Queen a7 invading, but Magnus has got it covered. A wonderful horse box is set up on the board. Rook over here, challenging this one. Of course, you're about to lose a piece, so you do have to deal with that. Nodebek's got the open queenside files. Very nice, but Magnus has got his play through the centre. Very thematic. If you're getting attacked on one side of the board, so often you want to look for counterplay in the centre, punch through the middle. Rook c6 is played, defending and attacking. This one invades, and I love this from Magnus.
Mushrooms.
You could play something like queen a6. It's a kind of bailouty move, but he plays this. It's more ambitious. Queen a8. Now this is really scary. You're only holding everything together with this knight. What if we could start distracting this knight? So Magnus takes here. Not actually the best move. What if you now try and distract this knight? I never actually checked, but now I'm really curious. Okay, queen c6 is critical to go for the queen exchange. And if takes, what's the point? Takes. Okay, there's no in between. Check. Few. King on h7, you'd be in trouble. This seems to be the line. Why isn't this dropping? Okay, because you take the knight. Fine. So you can just survive. But knight f5 is very scary all the same. Magnus only has one move here to not be significantly worse, and he finds it with knight d7. He hits this rook and he defends his bishop some more. Great play. Now we see the rook hit the queen. I mean, this is so complicated. They're playing on such low time, such a high standard of chess. Now he offers the exchange of the queens. Takes was played, and it's a mistake. Really, you want to be playing the queen into here or here, keeping the attacking ideas, keeping the complications, because once you exchange off, you're now a clean pawn down. That's scary. Playing Magnus Carlsen. Rook e6, a fine move. Trying to exchange the rooks, and if takes, you kick the knight before your own can get cooked, or kicked rather, or cooked. Compromised structure, but black still a pawn ahead. Let's run back. We didn't see the rook off the board. Sliding away to c8, good move. This knight rotates around, centre under fire, knight dropping back, and Magnus now switches up the initiative here. Hits the rook, hits the knight. You could definitely take, but Nordebek wins back his pawn, allows takes, structure is changed, rook is hit, and this is fine for white. However, it's tricky, because now you have to contend with the fact that you can't defend this pawn very easily. Magnus starts targeting it. First plays the usually stinky f6, kicks back the bishop, retreating to d2. Now we see the knight hop back, and white's in a world of pain. Rook hit and pawn. Best move is this, to create the pin, but then this one can move. Hit the bishop here. It starts getting unpleasant. Bishop b4, knight takes on f5. This kind of thing, right? Black has won a pawn, another one attacked. Let's run back. That wasn't played. Rook e6, but the lines are quite similar. Magnus wins the pawn straight away here. g3 defends the second, and he steps in with the king. Nordebek now with a mammoth defensive task, trying to hold off the 19-time world champion. I think I've got that correct. 8 Blitz titles, 5 world titles, 5 or 6 rapid titles. We see these leaving the board. It's a dead draw, but we know Magnus is going to press, especially when his king is chilling in the bathtub, rubber ducky in hand. Rook a2 is played, rook c4. Magnus whispers, do you even rook cliff, bro? Rook d2 hits that bishop, saves itself. Rook now moves away. Bishop c3. I mean, it's so tense, so exciting. Watching it live. The king's going to step in. Rook a2 back. Bishop d4. Again, do you want to exchange? Nordebek says no. Not a bad move. He's just under pressure. Full stop. Magnus even offers the rook exchange. And Nordebek's like, fine, let's do it. Was it a good move? Bad move? I don't know. It's so tricky. And now with this pawn attacked, how many of us are playing the move pawn f5? I mean, it's just the move you play, right? It just looks so normal and logical and sensible. But Magnus plays e4. Defends like that. King f1. King d3 stops this white king activating. Bishop h6 and bishop e5. And just like that, he's created this problem for his opponent. He's done it for his entire career, which you'd have to say is about 20 years long now. 2 decades. There's only one move here to hold a balance. The move is bishop g7. And you create the pressure on the pawn and the pressure on the bishop behind it. Black could go e3, let's say, but takes, king steps in to cover here, although the bishop's trying to do 2 jobs anyway, and you just hold this balance. It's not so easy for black to make progress, right? If you ever liquidate 2 sets of pawns, well then this one can always give itself up, hopefully, unless you trade the bishops in the wrong way. Sometimes even then that's a draw, if the king stands in front of the pawn. But not played. No bishop g7, bishop c1. It's a completely losing move. Can you guess what Magnus Carlsen played here? Well done if you found the idea of pawn to e3. And with this move, he has sealed another world championship. The Blitz this time, going back to back with the rapid. Bishop takes, of course, but then bishop takes here is what Magnus played. And if you take, then takes, and this is a lost king and pawn endgame, right? What to do? You can just wait around, shoulder out the king. I mean, you can also start pushing pawns, but eventually the king has to give ground, step away, and I guess you start pushing here. Didn't actually prepare this line, but this is a one game. Probably don't go h4 because then you're going to lose. Let's actually just step this through back here. Okay, g4, force it away. This kind of thing. I mean, you have to be a bit careful. Say you do this. This is surely a draw, right? You know, you do have to be careful, but it's a lost game. So we didn't see takes. Nodebek desperately tries bishop g5, but it is absolute desperation. Magnus just takes that one, and we see resigns because after takes, again, completely lost position. You shoulder out the king, you win the second pawn, and you march him through. This is how it could have ended. No stalemate today, only checkmate. This is the final position. Magnus Carlsen has just won the Rapid World Chess Championship and the Blitz World Chess Championship. You have to feel like he's probably at the absolute peak pinnacle of his career right now. How long can he keep this up, right? Just got married, just had a kid. He's pushing into his mid-30s. Like, this level is just insane. How long can it go for? Hope you enjoyed all these recaps. Do let me know down below. Do drop a like, a hype, a subscribe, anything you feel like. Really appreciate all of the support. And have a look at the video on screen if you want to see some more epic chess. Cheers.